Okay, well I've got 3 o'clock on the dot, so we'll go ahead and get started. Good afternoon everyone, and thanks for attending our next in our series of faculty-led 7-minute Sizzles. Today we have eCourse sociology instructor Tiffany Parsons, and she's going to share a little bit about how she incorporates smart thinking in her classes. So Professor Parsons, I will go ahead and hand it over to you.
Thanks, Michael. Can everybody hear me? Just making sure. If you can't hear me, say something in the chat and we can fix that. But so originally what happened, the reason I kind of stumbled into smart thinking was because I found that many of my intro-level online students, both at the University of West Georgia and in eCore, were not writing at a college level for whatever reason. And I've heard, you know, it's a sociology class, not English class, so I didn't think writing was important, or that I've learned that some of our students have come from high schools that maybe didn't provide them with the writing education they need to be very successful in college. And a lot of the intro students haven't taken their freshman level English classes yet. And so in sociology, as well as most other fields, writing is really important. And if a student is going into social science or business or most of the humanities, she needs to write well in order to be successful in her career. So it turned out that I was spending almost as much time teaching students to write than I was about sociology. And so it was also causing me to spend way too much time grading. Teaching 40 students how to write as well as the sociology was just taking way longer than I have to give to one class, for example. So I had to figure out a way to help the students learn to write and learn sociology, and that's when I found smart thinking. It was about the same time. And I loved smart thinking immediately. It gives students the opportunity to practice before being graded, kind of like our self-assessments do. But they get this wonderful feedback from an expert in writing or an English professor, and then they get the opportunity to improve that essay, to use that feedback to improve their essay before submitting it for a grade. And so immediately I was like, oh, this is good stuff, especially once I saw the feedback from the tutors, because I was initially a little skeptical about would they know how to write for sociology, et cetera, but they absolutely are doing a fabulous job, or all those that I've had in contact with so far are doing a great job. So then it took me some trial and error to figure out how to do it best in my online classrooms. So the first time I did it, I incorporated smart thinking in my class. I made it optional. Well, most of you have been teaching long enough that you know exactly how that went. The really good students took full advantage of it and earned grades even higher than they would have. The others chose not to use it, and I still had my original problem. So the second time I incorporated smart thinking, I made it optional for the first essay, and then I required it for those who earned less than a 75% on the following essay. The good news is that many of the students who earned less than average scores on the first one improved in the following essays. The bad news, though, was twofold. The students who earned above average on the first essays did not see as much improvement on the following essays, and I received a good amount of backlash from the students that were required to use smart thinking in the second essay. They were not happy with what they considered or felt like was an extra requirement. And remembering being an undergrad student myself, I could totally understand that. So now I'm requiring it for every essay from all students. Whether you're an excellent writer or whether you're a poor writer, you have to use smart thinking. The backlash completely ceased. So making it kind of a requirement from the very beginning for all people, the backlash just completely went away. And they don't feel like I'm springing something extra on them. And across the board, in both my UWG classes and in my eCore class, the essays are improving from their initial draft, the one they submit to Smart Thinking, to the one they submit to me for a grade, is a much better work. But across the board, students' essays are improving from one essay to essay 2 to essay 3 to essay 4 as well. So not only are they getting better grades because they've been editing, their writing is getting better as they go throughout the semester. So from my perspective, they are learning to write And I'm getting to teach them sociology, not writing, and I get to really focus on the sociology. And again, I'm also spending much less time grading essays because the professional has already guided them through a lot of their trouble spots. So if they are having trouble creating a strong thesis statement, or if they're having comma errors, this expert is already pointing that out to them and helping them do a better job. So here's how to set it up or in the course that I have found that works the best, is to do a 2 Dropbox folder kind of system. And I learned this by trial and error as well. So I set up the course so that the student has to submit the feedback they receive from Smarthinking to a Dropbox folder before the actual assignment Dropbox folder will open for them. And I figured this out the hard way. I had students who just wouldn't do the Smarthinking unless they couldn't get to the graded assignment until they had completed it. So that's why we have the 2-box system, and it seems to work really well. On the instructor end, it looks like this. So you see that I have 4 Smarthinking feedback Dropboxes, 1 for each writings, and it clearly says Smarthinking feedback for L2 writing, for L5 writing, for L7, and then I have the actual writing assignments Dropboxes. From the student's perspective, it looks like this. So all the Smarthinking Dropboxes are wide open. But as you see, I did not submit my feedback for L2 writing, so I do not have an L2 writing Dropbox open to me under the actual graded assignment. I have submitted my Smarthinking feedback for L5, so I do have my L5 writing assignment Dropbox open for me. What I have found is really important is making sure that the students are provided with the details of the requirement, all elements of it, from the very beginning in kind of broad, bold language, making sure that they know that this is an assignment or a requirement, because it's kind of new to UWG and to eCourse, so many students have never used it before, they've never even seen it before. So what I did was, in the eCourse syllabus, they have a section in our syllabus that talks about Smarthinking online tutoring and tells you what it is. Well, under that information right there in the syllabus, I provide in bold, in red letters, that they are required to use the service. And then I did it again under the descriptions of the writing assignments themselves. And I used bright red letters there too, so that it's in 2 spaces, so they know from the beginning, from reading their syllabus, that they're going to be required to use this Smarthinking Dropbox, or the Smarthinking tutoring. And you can also see that I gave a pretty good details under the Smarthinking one, because a lot of the students haven't had to use Smarthinking before or have never even seen it before. So I explained that they're going to have to submit to Smarthinking, and then exactly what's going to happen next. A writing expert's going to review it, they're going to return it within 24 hours, and then I go on to explain what they're supposed to do with that. Submit the feedback to the Dropbox, then use that feedback to revise their essay, and then submit their final draft to a different Dropbox. And I do make clear there that you can't gain access to the actual writing assignment Dropbox unless you have submitted the feedback. And then the second place I say, right under the grading standards where it says the brief description of the writing assignment, I say it again, you have to submit 2 times feedback from Smarthinking and the revised paper. And then I say again, to gain access to the graded writing Dropbox, you must submit your feedback from Smarthinking, so that there's really no excuse for a student to not at least know that this is going to be that this is going to be a requirement, and then they have plenty of time before the first writing assignment is due to ask questions to figure out how to use it, and we can walk them through that. So another kind of final advantage that I have found is that as the instructor, requiring them to not only use Smarthinking but to submit their feedback, is that we can review the original draft as well as the feedback. So we can see if the student is improving from the draft to the final submission. We can see if they're following the advice of the tutor or if they're ignoring the advice of the tutor. And I then can praise the students for their smart choices in choosing to follow the student's advice and the improvements they've made. So instead of me saying if they had presented their draft to me, the first one they submitted, I would have had to go through and say, you've got some comma errors here and you've got these problems, and then you're going to get a C or lower maybe on the paper. Well, now I can just say, great job, you made a lot of good improvements. I can really be positive. And then those students who might not take full advantage of the Smart Thinking tutor's advice, I can encourage them to do so in their future essays, and especially since they know I'm actually looking at what the tutor is saying and their first draft versus their final draft. And I did put up some feedbacks that I've given this semester on L2 writing, just to give you an example of what I do. Of course, I know everyone has their own style, but these students, both of these students, did a really good job of taking advantage of what the tutor said, and they made 85-80. If they had submitted to me their first draft, one of them would have been probably a 68-ish, and one of them would have been a low C. So using the Smart Thinking then bumped their grades, both of their grades, up to Bs, which I think is amazing. Now, these are two students who didn't take full advantage of the Smart Thinking tutors, and probably because they're decent writers on their own, except that had they followed the advice, they would have made A's. So hopefully by saying things like, if your essay if you'd have followed the kind of tutor's advice, your essay would have benefited. Maybe next time they will actually use the tutor's advice and improve their own writing as well. Okay, so I know that there was a question here from Jason that Ashley answered, and there is the eCourse system is really easy to use in how to set that up. Just a few little clicks, and Ashley can walk you through how to do that, or I can sometime. You've got my phone number, my email. Are there any other questions?
I don't have a question. This is Ashley, by the way, but I just have a comment. This is extremely helpful, and I'm glad that you were able to share your strategy with the rest of the group. For those of you kind of curious about Smart Thinking, if you're not familiar with it, it is integrated within the system, and so students don't even have to log in to access Smart Thinking. They can just click in the navigation bar and easily access it. And we also pay for these tutoring minutes, so it's free to our students. So it's great that Tiffany has found a way to utilize it in this way. Also, they're very high quality tutors. We actually have one of our English faculty members is going through training right now to be a Smart Thinking tutor, and she's talked about how intense it is. So they are high quality tutors that offer great feedback for your students, and I'm glad that Tiffany was able to find value in the services they provide. Even though she's not teaching an English course, obviously students need to know how to write well, regardless of what profession that they intend to go into. So I'm glad you had some time to share. And if anybody else is interested in trying this within your course, just let us know. You can email eCourseCI and we'd be happy to assist you.
Oh, I might not have said this, but the time it takes me to grade the essays has drastically decreased since using Smart Thinking, because a lot of the writing is already fixed, so I don't have to reread sentences, that kind of thing, to understand what the student is trying to convey. So that's also good for our personal sanity. And I think it would, like Christine said, I think it would work for most classes that do writing. So. Well, thank you all for listening to me, and I hope you enjoy using Smart Thinking, and I hope it works for you as well as it did for me.
Yeah, thank you, Tiffany, for sharing that with us. It looks like it's definitely a really good strategy to help your students and help you in the course. I just wanted to check one last time, make sure we don't have any other questions. And it looks like we don't right now. Well, thank you again, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And we'll actually be sending some information out very soon about our next Sizzle, which is still being planned right now, but there'll probably be one sometime early next month.